This is a set of a study of money flows in the United States. So this is Morris Copeland's book, 1952. This is a book published by the National Bureau of Economic Research, in fact. And he was proposing this set of accounts that you're seeing right here as a framework for macroeconomic analysis. What it is, it's based on this conceptual framework, okay, uses and sources for each individual, okay? But of course, we don't have data for every single transaction for every individual, okay? So there's a lot of sort of aggregation and netting and things like that. And that's what makes it difficult for people to understand the flow of funds, because they don't have this back in their mind, okay? But this is exactly how it's structured there. And you can see that it's the whole macroeconomy there, okay? So there's a column here, it's probably too small print for you to read from there. But the first column, I'll just read it to you, households and nonprofit organizations. And there's two columns. The left one is uses and the right one is sources. Okay? So what they're doing is thinking of all households, you know, all households in the whole United States as one entity. And they're looking down and they're saying the first 13 lines, well, the first 12 lines are sort of the above the line part. It's the goods and services part that we're talking about. Everything below that is the financial assets. You can see lines 14 to 22 is basically different kinds of money. You have US official reserves, you have SDRs, you have treasury currency, foreign deposits, you have stuff like that. And then from 23 on down, these are forms of credit. Okay, so they do it in reverse order. They put money on top and forms of credit below. In here. And what you're seeing in uses, and they're aggregating, but aggregation will still preserve this rule. Okay? These rules still apply. Okay? And what these rules mean, the consequence of these rules in the flow of funds accounts, is that the column sums are supposed to sum to the same number. So for each column, households, the left-hand column, okay, which is uses, should sum to the same number as the right-hand column. Okay. It's also, rule number 2 says that the rows should sum to 0. And they don't. You can see these statistical discrepancies here. That just means that your statistical net hasn't captured something, okay? But you know where the mistake is, kind of, because the rows are supposed to sum and the columns are supposed to sum. So you kind of know where the problem is. So there's households, there's non-financial business, there's state and local governments, there's federal government, there's domestic non-financial sectors, domestic financial sectors, rest of the world, okay? This set of accounts, okay, is the concrete instantiation of the point of view that Minsky was saying in that quote that I gave him, right? It's treating every unit, state and local government, households, businesses, banks, as if they're banks. We're thinking about sources and uses of funds, okay, for all of them. And this is a framework for thinking about the economy. So there's netting. It's a little, when you look there, you'll see some of these sources are negative. That's like an odd sort of concept. How can there be a negative source? This puzzled me when I was trying to learn this sort of thing. Think about how they're constructing it, okay? They're constructing it by saying borrowing is a source of funds, okay? If your total quantity of borrowing went down, okay, that's a negative source of funds. So that's repayment is basically what that is. So instead of doing it as we're doing, where we have repayment as a use of funds, they're treating reduction in debt as a negative source. But that retains these rules, okay? They're just moving it to the other side of the balance sheet, okay? And similarly for uses, sometimes there are negative numbers in uses, okay? And that's, again, if there's a negative number in uses, it means you have some financial asset that you've reduced your accumulation of, okay? So it's decumulation. So if you have in mind these concepts, that this is the underlying analytical framework, the underlying conceptual framework, apply that to this matrix and you can see it all. Often when people are using these accounts, they don't see it in a matrix like this. You know, they'll just have one table that tells you what's happening with open market paper, okay? Or what's happening with non-financial business or something. But this is the whole set of accounts. This is the macroeconomy, okay? And what Copeland had in mind, what he proposed in this book right here, he said Keynes is wrong. C plus I plus G equals Y is not a good framework for thinking about the macroeconomy because it doesn't take into account purchases and sales of financial assets. It doesn't take into account purchases and sales of secondary, of goods that are already produced, like old houses. You know, this is a very big market in the United States. This is focusing on new production, and that's all very fine and good, but there's a lot happening in the economy other than this, which you're basically just abstracting from. And a lot of it is involving the monetary system and the financial system, and you're just abstracting from all of this. It's not good enough for understanding the economy. Similarly, he said, you monitress, MV equals PT, okay? You're focusing on this M thing here, okay, and treating all transactions as if they're made with money. It's like Oren's Daily Roast. The whole economy is like Oren's Daily Roast. No. Most of the economy is credit transactions, okay? Most of the economy is Varelli-like transactions, and you're just absorbing that into this V number here, just treating it as if money was spinning around faster and faster. These aren't good enough accounting structures for understanding the modern monetary economy, said Morris Copeland. I think he was right, actually, but he didn't win. And so these sets of accounts were collected by a little division of the Fed up on the 5th floor in the back of the Board of Governors. People were like an arcane set of accounts for years and years and years. They collected them and they kept poring over them and so forth. But it was not used for economic policy because there was no macroeconomic theory that hung on to it. Right? The Keynesians grabbed onto this and had a whole macroeconomic theory, okay, about how spending causes income. Okay, the monetarists hung on to this, and they had a whole macroeconomic theory, but there was never a macroeconomic theory for this. So there's a Nobel Prize for you. Okay, I think there will be. There will be a macroeconomic theory for this, but not for flow of funds as currently it is used. Because look at these statistical discrepancies. These are large numbers. Okay. Look on the last column here. The largest number there is $115 billion, statistical discrepancy, for the line 22, which is Fed funds and security RPs. That's the wholesale money market. Okay? What this tells you is that the action in the wholesale money market is not being caught in the statistical net of the Federal Reserve System. It's not being caught. We know approximately the size of the error, 115 billion, but we don't know exactly where it is. We don't know where it is. There's a lot of stuff happening that we don't know about, and we're trying to make policy. We're trying to make decisions, and a lot of stuff is happening. Like only the flow of funds even tells you this much, okay? NEPA accounts, MV equals PT, doesn't even tell you this much, okay? But Fed funds is antiquated, okay? It's a place to start, but it's not a place to finish. Similarly, look at the sector discrepancies. These are big numbers. Household and nonprofit organizations, that's $561 billion discrepancy there, okay? And similarly, large numbers here, domestic non-financial sectors, $440 billion. A lot of this is because non-financial businesses are financial businesses. The categories that we've divided things into. We're imagining that GM makes cars. You know, GM makes cars, sure, okay, but they really are also a financial institution. They're sort of a bank. They have got international operations, and the same is true with nonprofit organizations. The world has changed out from under Morris Copeland, 1952, okay? And so the Office of Financial Research, which is a division of the Fed, has been established after this crisis to create new accounting structures. Basically, everyone realizes that our accounting is in bad shape. The accounting, corporate accounting for individual corporate accounts, but I also want to say our macroeconomic accounting isn't designed to capture the kinds of things that are happening in the economy today. One thing you notice there, where's all the derivatives? You know, where's the swaps? Where's the options? You know, it's not, there were no such things in 1952, and so they're not there. They're all off-balance sheet items, all these exposures. That's why you got all these errors, you know, that there's a lot of stuff happening in the economy that's not being caught, even in this set of accounts, okay? A lot of what I'm going to do in this class, you'll see, is to soup up these accounts so that we can include swaps and derivatives and so forth. It's not so hard to do. And so I made a proposal to the OFR, maybe they'll accept it, that this is the direction that we should be going. There's a lot more detail because I'm not an actual accountant, I'm an economist.